Why was no one saluting her? The snow fell in soft, aimless spirals over the barbed wire perimeter of Fob Prestige North, painting the outpost in ghostly silence. Floodlights glared across the compound, catching flecks of frost as a convoy of supply trucks rumbled into the motor pool. Beneath the noise, beneath the hum of diesel and distant comms chatter, a single figure stood motionless at the gate, a woman in faded jeans, a simple parka, and worn-out combat boots. Her name, though no one here knew it yet, was Commander Maya Collins, decorated sniper, former Special Operations Officer, and the new Covert Director of Field Conduct Operations for the Global Allied Command Group. She had been sent to test something no simulation could measure: character under routine pressure. The test was simple, or so it looked on paper: arrive at the base unannounced, request accommodation as a civilian logistics inspector, observe the response. If they treated her with professionalism, the base passed. If they dismissed her, they revealed everything wrong with their command culture. Maya tightened her parka hood against the wind and approached the checkpoint. The sentry barely looked up, a young corporal with a cigarette dangling from his lips, eyes glazed with boredom. "Evening, ma'am," he muttered, voice flat. "Base is restricted access. Civilians go through admin authorization. You'll need to wait." Maya handed him her identification folder, unmarked, sealed under civilian credentials. He didn't even open it. "Look, lady," he sighed, "we're in the middle of a rotation shift. Admin's closed till 0600. Try again in the morning." She studied him quietly, the way his rifle strap hung loose, the casual lean against the blast wall, the faint contempt of someone too comfortable in a place meant for vigilance. It wasn't arrogance that bothered her. It was carelessness. Her voice was calm. "You sure you want to make that your final call, Corporal?" He blinked. "Ma'am." "Final call," she repeated softly, watching his confusion build. "Because sometimes the next minute decides the rest of your career." The young man straightened slightly but shrugged. "Look, it's procedure, all right. You can't just walk in." Behind him, the base's glass-fronted operations center glowed like a luxury hotel lobby, incongruous against the bleak snowfields of northern Europe. This was Prestige North, a high-tech forward base turned Joint Command showcase, recently privatized under a billion-dollar defense acquisition. It was supposed to represent the future of humanitarian operations, where discipline met diplomacy. But Maya had read the internal reports: 17 conduct complaints, 5 investigations buried, 2 civilian aid workers humiliated on site. She'd come to find out why. Inside the ops center, the warm light made her squint. The floor was polished tile instead of the usual steel grate. A corporate-style reception desk dominated the entrance, a holdover from the base's new private management. 2 officers in dress uniforms stood behind it, chatting casually with a security sergeant who barely noticed her entrance. "Excuse me," Maya said evenly. "I'm checking in for a temporary inspection assignment. Collins, Maya Collins." One of the officers, a tall man with slick-back blonde hair and the confidence of someone used to control, turned, his smile sharp but cold. "Ma'am, this is an active operations base," he said with professional politeness that didn't reach his eyes. "We're not exactly taking walk-ins." Her lips curved faintly. "And yet your charter says civilian oversight personnel to be granted full accommodation access upon arrival. I have authorization from Command Central." He gave a short laugh. "Authorization? From who?" His tone was smug, dismissive. "You look like you just stepped off a bus from Chicago, not a command transport." Maya met his gaze. "So you're saying I don't look like I belong here?" The man's smirk didn't falter. "I'm saying people who belong here usually have credentials, uniforms, a rank that means something." Her calm was unnerving, a stillness honed through years of missions where emotions were luxuries. "What's your name, Lieutenant?" He said automatically, "Night Command." Of course it was. She'd seen his name in half a dozen buried disciplinary files, reports of disrespect, misconduct, discretionary reassignment from two other bases, the kind of officer who thrived in the shadows of bureaucracy. She repeated softly, "Let's see how you handle protocol." She placed her ID folder on the counter. He flipped it open carelessly, frowned at the civilian credentials, then shut it again with a sigh. "This isn't valid for base lodging. You'll have to wait until morning." Her jaw tightened slightly. "My quarters were pre-cleared, the inspector suite." "The inspector suite," chuckled, glancing toward his assistant, a woman in her late 30s with a clipboard and an expression that hovered between fear and flattery. "Did you hear that? The inspector suite. Haven't heard that one in a while." Smirked faintly, clearly taking her cues from him. "We're at full capacity tonight. She'll have to find civilian housing off-site." "That's an order?" Maya asked. "That's a policy," replied, stepping closer. "Unless you've got something real to show me." Maya's hand slipped into her bag. She produced a sleek black ID card, featureless, unmarked, its edges polished like obsidian. She set it quietly on the counter. "Scan it." Hesitated, then reached for the reader. The terminal beeped once, paused, and then flashed access DENIED. He smirked. "See, system doesn't even recognize it." She smiled faintly. "That's because your system isn't cleared for top-tier authentication." "Oh, that's rich." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "Look, lady, I've been here 3 years. You think I don't know every clearance level that passes through this gate? You're not one of us. You're nobody." She didn't answer, just reached down, retrieved her card, wiped the faint scuff where his fingers had smudged it. The silence between them was colder than the snow outside. From the far end of the room, a security officer approached, tall, disciplined, calm. Chief, former military police, now head of internal base security. His eyes caught the tension immediately. "Everything all right here?" His tone was respectful, professional. Gestured dismissively toward Maya, civilian trying to con her way into restricted quarters. Looked at her, then back at him. Something in her posture, the quiet authority, the precision of her words made him hesitate. "Ma'am, may I see your documentation?" She handed him the folder, flipped through the credentials, noting the layered seals, the encrypted insignia, the black edge watermark that only high-clearance personnel used. His brow furrowed. "This looks official," he murmured. "It is," she said softly, "but you don't have to take my word for it. Just check section 14.3 of your base manual." Blinked. 14.3. "Protocol for Civilian Oversight Entries," she clarified. "It outlines the chain of deference for inspection officers and the penalties for obstructing them." Rolled his eyes. She's bluffing. It's probably something she memorized off the internet. Pulled out his tablet, scrolling quickly through the digital operations manual. His lips moved silently as he read, then stilled. He looked up slowly, meeting eyes. Section 14.3 confirms civilian oversight officers with direct authorization from Central Command are to be granted immediate lodging, priority access, and full cooperation from base management. Sgrin faltered. "You're kidding." "I'm not," said, "and obstructing them is grounds for disciplinary action." For the first time, the room went quiet. The few personnel lingering nearby pretended to focus on their screens but watched closely. Arrogance wavered, replaced by confusion, then indignation. "This is ridiculous," he said finally. "Nobody told me about an inspection." "Exactly," Maya replied, her voice calm. "Because it's an inspection." Exhaled sharply, stepping closer, lowering his voice to a hiss. "Listen, I don't know who the hell you think you are, but if you keep this up, I'll have security escort you out myself." His jaw tightened. "Lieutenant, with respect, I don't think that's a good idea." "Then you're dismissed," Chief snapped. "I'll handle this." He turned back to Maya, his temper barely leashed. "Last chance. You walk out now, or I make a call that'll end this conversation permanently." Maya tilted her head slightly, studying him, not as a superior, but as a scientist watching a failed experiment. She pulled a thin tablet from her bag, tapped once, and turned it toward him. The screen displayed a secure login prompt, military-grade encryption. Then a profile appeared. His profile: Lieutenant, Night Operations Command, 23 complaints pending review. Blood drained from his face. "What the how did you?" She set the tablet down. "Because, Lieutenant," she said softly, "I'm not a guest, I'm your audit." The silence that followed was absolute. Only the faint hum of fluorescent lights, the whir of the heater, and the distant wind pressing against the walls. "Swallowed, you're with Command Oversight," she finished for him. "The division that decides which bases stay funded and which ones are dissolved." The assistant manager's clipboard clattered to the floor, stepped back, eyes widening slightly. And for the first time, Maya let her voice carry authority, not loud but final. "Effective immediately, Lieutenant. You're relieved of duty pending investigation. Sergeant, you'll secure all digital logs for tonight. Chief, ensure the perimeter lockdown remains in effect until I say otherwise." She turned toward the stunned staff, and the handful of soldiers froze in mid-motion. "Consider this your wake-up call," she said. "You're operating under my direct observation for the next 72 hours. Every action you take will determine not just your post, but whether this base remains active." No one moved, no one breathed. Maya picked up her messenger bag, slung it over her shoulder, and walked toward the elevator without looking back. As the doors closed, her reflection flickered in the mirrored steel, a woman in simple clothes, carrying the weight of command hidden beneath quiet restraint. In her earpiece, a faint voice crackled from Command Channel 7. "Ma'am, confirmation received. You're clear to proceed with full integrity audit." Maya closed her eyes briefly, exhaling. So it began. Why did the silence feel heavier than any explosion? The elevator hummed upward, its metal walls vibrating with the faint rhythm of the generators outside. Maya Collins stood still, messenger bag slung over her shoulder, pulse steady though her thoughts moved like crossfire. Through the mirrored doors she caught her reflection. A civilian coat, snow on her sleeves, eyes that looked far more tired than defiant. Underneath that calm, every instinct screamed that the next 72 hours would decide more than one career, maybe an entire command soul. She keyed the penthouse code, Command Observation Suite 1A, the same quarters every general used when visiting the base. The door hissed open. The room looked less like a military facility and more like a corporate lounge. Polished wood, imported leather, a panoramic view of floodlit snowfields. Prestige North prided itself on its modern humanitarian image. Somewhere along the way, discipline had turned into. Maya set down her bag, removed the hidden transmitter from her ear, and whispered. "Collins to Central, base entry complete. Initial contact confirms arrogance, chain breakdown, and potential discrimination culture. Beginning phase 2. The reply was crisp. "Copy, Commander. Recordings active. Proceed with discretion. You're dark from this point on." Dark acknowledged. She cut the link. Now it was just her, one woman against an entire command network pretending to be noble. Downstairs, the operations floor buzzed again, had retreated to his office, rage barely contained. Maya watched from the overhead feed on her tablet, security access granted through her hidden clearance. He was packing like a caged animal, barking at his assistant. "Do you know who she is, where she came from?" he hissed. Stammered. "She said she's command oversight." "Anyone can say that. You realize if she really is, we're screwed." Maya muted the feed. There was no satisfaction in watching fear, only confirmation. The same pattern she'd seen on a dozen failed posts: disrespect, followed by denial, followed by collapse. She poured a cup of instant coffee, the bitter smell grounding her. Her mind drifted back to Kandahar, to a mission that had ended in a dust storm and a decision that had cost good men their lives. Command had called it acceptable collateral. She'd called it a wound that never healed. Maybe that was why this assignment mattered so much. Because arrogance, unchecked, always killed something, sometimes people, sometimes principle. A soft knock on the door pulled her back. Stood in the doorway, posture straight but cautious. His eyes studied her, still uncertain how to address the woman who dismantled his commanding officer in 5 minutes flat. "Ma'am," he said finally, "you asked me to secure the digital logs." "Come in, Chief." He handed her a data stick. Surveillance, communications, personnel rotations last 60 days. Some files were encrypted with private key. I've mirrored them for you. "Efficient," she said quietly. "I figured you'd want everything." For a long moment she just looked at him. A soldier's bearing, no arrogance, no performance. The kind who keeps the line from breaking. "Tell me something," she said. "How long have you been here?" 4 years. "And how long have you been watching that man run this place into the ground?" His jaw flexed. "Too long, ma'am. I filed reports. They disappeared. You know how it goes, senior connections, friends in regional command." 17 formal complaints, she murmured, all buried. He exhaled, a humorless sound. "Then you already know." She set the drive on the table. "I need you tonight, quietly. Pull your 2 most reliable NCOs. I want to sweep barracks, armory, communications center. Anything out of place, contraband, unauthorized channels, civilian cash movement. Log everything." Nodded. "What's the real objective, Commander? You here to shut us down?" Maya met his eyes. "I'm here to find out if this place deserves to exist." He hesitated, then saluted sharp, clean, the kind born of respect rather than fear. "Yes, ma'am." When he was gone, Maya let out a slow breath. The snow kept falling outside, relentless and soundless, as if the world itself were holding its breath. Hours later, near midnight, she walked the corridors alone. Her civilian boots made soft echoes on the polished floor. Soldiers glanced at her and looked away, uncertain who she was but sensing authority in her stillness. In every hall she saw the signs: overconfidence, complacency, expensive upgrades masking decaying discipline. In the mess hall she passed a group of junior soldiers. Their laughter died as she entered. One of them, young, tired, eyes rimmed red, muttered, not quietly enough. "Guess command's sending spies now." Maya turned, met his gaze, and said only, "Command sends hope. Sometimes it looks like trouble." He looked down. She kept walking. At the logistics wing she paused. Through the glass window she could see Rachel Mitchell, a new quartermaster, barely 23, her uniform sleeves rolled up as she typed reports into the terminal. Her face was tense. She was alone. Maya watched her for a moment. That kind of focus at that hour usually meant one of 2 things, guilt or conscience. She stepped inside. "Corporal Mitchell." Rachel startled, nearly knocking over her mug. "Yes, yes, ma'am." "Relax, you're not in trouble, yet." The girl blinked. "Yet, ma'am." Maya's tone softened. "You were on duty when I arrived earlier. You watched the incident at the reception desk." Rachel's shoulders tensed. Yes, ma'am." "And you laughed." Her breath caught. "I didn't mean it was just everyone follows lieutenant's lead. You go against him, you lose shifts. He ruins people's records." "Fear's no excuse for cruelty," Maya said quietly. "But fear can be turned into courage if you decide to stop serving the wrong masters." Rachel's eyes filled with shame. "Are you going to write me up?" "I'm going to give you a choice," Maya said. "Tell me everything you've seen here, the truth, or stay silent and let this rot continue until someone else pays the price." Rachel swallowed hard, glancing around the empty office. Then she nodded slowly. "I'll talk." And she did. For nearly an hour, Maya listened about favoritism, fake reports, civilians humiliated during supply checks, even rumors that ran side deals with private contractors skimming relief funds. None of it surprised her, but hearing it in that tremulous, exhausted voice hit differently. When Rachel finished, she looked up as if expecting to be dismissed. Instead, Maya said, "You ever think about why you joined?" Rachel hesitated. "My dad was Army. He taught me to serve something bigger than myself." Maya nodded, "Then start tonight." At 0300, returned. His face told her everything before he spoke. "Commander, you'll want to see this." They went to the comms bunker, a dim room lit only by the blue glow of monitors. He inserted a drive into the terminal. Surveillance footage flickered across the screen, and in his office 2 nights earlier, counting sealed envelopes. Audio playback hissed, then cleared. "Keep the cash flow under the entertainment fund. Call it morale expenses." "What if command audits?" "They won't. Nobody cares what happens this far north." Maya's jaw set. Nobody cares. She'd heard that line before, whispered over body bags in Afghanistan, mumbled after failed evacuations. It was always the same poison, the belief that accountability stops where the snow begins. "Get me every transaction tagged entertainment fund," she ordered. Nodded, "Already compiling. There's something else, encrypted correspondence with local contractors, the kind who don't exactly build roads." "Trafficking?" "Could be, hard to say yet." Maya's fingers drummed the console. The evidence was enough to trigger a full internal tribunal, but she wasn't ready to go public. Not yet. She wanted them to reveal themselves. She straightened. "We do nothing until 1800 hours. Let him believe I backed off. Then I'll convene full staff assembly." Studied her for a moment. "You really think one night can change a place like this?" Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "One night changed me once." When she finally lay down on the narrow cot in the command suite, the exhaustion hit in waves. The room was silent except for the distant hum of generators. Her thoughts blurred, past and present colliding. The dust storm. The radio call she hadn't answered fast enough. The men she'd lost because she'd trusted arrogance over instinct. She promised herself she would never let that happen again. Not in the field. Not in command. Not anywhere she had a voice. Outside, dawn began to bleed into the horizon, pale and cold. The snow reflected it like shattered glass. The base was waking up again, unaware that its night had already ended in judgment. Her alarm buzzed at 600. She rose, dressed in the same simple clothes, no insignia, no armor. Let them underestimate her one last time. In the mess hall, conversations hushed as she entered. Was already there, dark circles under his eyes, trying to look in control. He didn't greet her. He didn't have to. The air between them was already electric with unspoken consequences. "Lieutenant," she said, voice even. "Assembly in the atrium at 1800. Mandatory attendance." He frowned. "What for?" "For closure," she said simply and walked out. That evening the atrium lights glared against the steel beams overhead. Dozens of personnel filled the space, murmuring, uneasy. Stood near the podium, whispering too. Waited quietly by the side wall, tablet in hand. When Maya entered, the room stilled. She took the podium with unhurried grace, hands clasped behind her back. "Good evening," she began. Her voice wasn't loud, but every word carried. "When I arrived last night, I was entry to this base because I didn't look like I belonged. I was insulted, dismissed, and nearly expelled. What happened wasn't about one officer's arrogance. It was about a culture that confuses authority with superiority." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. "Let me be clear," she continued. "Respect is not a courtesy, it's a code. The moment you forget that, you stop being soldiers and start being something else." She nodded too. He tapped the tablet, projecting the recorded footage onto the atrium wall, his voice filling the air. "Keep the cash flow under the entertainment fund." The color drained from faces. A few gasped. His mouth opened but no sound came. His clipboard fell to the floor with a sharp crack. Maya's tone remained calm. This base will not be remembered for its corruption. It will be remembered for what comes after. Lieutenant, Sergeant, you are hereby suspended pending full investigation for conduct unbecoming of officers. Security will escort you for debrief. Nobody moved until she nodded too. He and two soldiers stepped forward. Tried to speak. You don't understand. Maya's gaze cut through him. I understand perfectly. You thought leadership meant power over people. It means responsibility for them. As they were led away, she faced the assembled ranks once more. I came here disguised as no one, to see who you really are when you think no one's watching. Some of you failed. Some of you didn't. But after tonight, you'll all have a choice to rebuild this place or leave it behind. Her voice softened, almost breaking, because the uniform means nothing without the honor that should live beneath it. She stepped back from the podium, the echo of her words lingering in the vast, cold space. The snow outside had stopped. For the first time since she arrived, the night felt clear. Why did the truth always come with silence first, and anger right after? The next morning, the base felt like a wound that hadn't decided whether to heal or bleed. Conversations died when Maya walked past. The air carried a weight of disbelief, the kind that only comes when people realize the ground beneath them was never solid. She ate breakfast alone at a corner table in the mess hall. The coffee was burnt. The room was quiet except for the low hum of voices. No one dared sit with her, not out of disrespect, but fear. Fear that association meant exposure. Fear that integrity, somehow, was contagious and dangerous at once. She didn't mind. Solitude had always been her armor. A young private walked by and accidentally dropped a tray. The clatter echoed through the hall. Maya turned instinctively, crouched, and helped him pick it up. He stammered an apology. She only smiled faintly. It's fine, she said. Everyone drops something eventually. What matters is what you do after. He blinked, unsure whether she meant the tray or the entire base. By noon, she was in the operations center, scanning through encrypted messages on the command terminal. Stood beside her, expression tight. Central's calling for clarification, he said. They want a full report of your actions here. Already drafted, she replied without looking up. But that's not what they really want. They want reassurance that this won't make headlines. He frowned. They'll try to bury it, won't they? Command doesn't bury, she said softly. They reframe. She tapped the screen. New transmission logs blinked into existence. Encrypted communications routed through civilian servers, flagged under priority discreet. Her gut clenched. Those channels they belonged to Regional Command North. A high-ranking cover-up. Leaned closer. That's Colonel Hayes's encryption key. Exactly, Maya murmured. And he's been the primary sponsor of this base since its inception. Meaning he knew. Or didn't want to know. She straightened, the faint tremor in her hand betraying more emotion than she intended. The rot's deeper than this building. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Only the low hum of the server racks filled the air. Outside, the snow had started again, slow, steady, relentless. Commander said finally, if you go after Hayes, you'll have the entire region gunning for you. Her eyes stayed on the screen. Then I'll give them a reason to aim carefully. Later that evening, she walked to the perimeter wall, where the snow gathered in uneven drifts against the sandbags. The horizon glowed faintly orange, the sun struggling through a storm front. Maya rested her hands on the cold railing, staring into the endless white. Somewhere beyond that horizon, a satellite beam carried her encrypted report straight to Central Command. But she wasn't thinking about that. She was thinking about Kandahar again. The sandstorm, the lost unit, the command that lied to protect itself. She could still hear the final radio call, Corporal's voice breaking through static. Ma'am, they told us to hold, but there's nothing left to hold. Then silence. She had obeyed orders that day. She had done everything by the book. And when the storm cleared, all that was left were excuses and empty medals. That was the day she'd promised herself. No more silence in the face of arrogance. Behind her, footsteps crunched on the snow. Again. He always moved like a man who didn't want to startle ghosts. "You should rest," he said quietly. "I don't sleep much anymore." "I noticed." He came to stand beside her. "You ever think you take too much on yourself?" She glanced at him. "That's the job." "Maybe," he said, "but I've seen officers who use the mission to avoid their past. You seem like you carry the mission to punish it." Her expression didn't change, but her silence was answer enough. Didn't press further. He just stood there, watching the wind carve invisible paths through the snow. By the next day, resistance began. It started with small things: system delays, missing reports, staff unavailable for interview. Then came the message. A secure transmission with no sender ID, routed through command. "Commander Collins, effective immediately, all investigative actions at FOB Prestige North are suspended pending review. You are to stand down and await further instruction. Colonel Hayes." Read it over her shoulder. "He's shutting you down." Maya's jaw clenched. "He's trying." "You're going to ignore it." It wasn't a question. "I'm going to finish what I started," she said quietly. "And if he wants to stop me, he can come do it himself." She locked the transmission and turned off the monitor. The decision was made. Every step from now on would be off the record. That evening she met Rachel Mitchell again, this time in the storage bay. The young corporal looked nervous but determined. "Ma'am, I pulled the files you asked for," Rachel whispered, holding out a data card. "They're old pre-privatization contracts. It looks like funds were diverted years before took over." Maya took the card. "Good work, you're risking a lot." Rachel shrugged. "You said once that fear can turn into courage. I figured I'd test the theory." A small smile touched Maya's lips. "Then let's make it count." They parted quickly. Maya slipped the card into her coat pocket and made her way back to her quarters. Every corridor felt watched. She could almost feel the cameras shifting, the unseen eyes of command tightening their circle. Inside her room, she loaded the data. The files were messy, redacted logs, encrypted memos, ghost accounts. But the pattern was there. Siphoned aid, reports, and funding trails that all led to one name: Hayes Global Logistics, a shell company registered to none other than Colonel Hayes's wife. Her stomach turned. The corruption wasn't just tolerated, it was built into the system. Her communicator buzzed. "You've been busy, Commander," said a voice, deep, calm, too smooth to be surprised. "Hayes," she said, "you've overstepped your jurisdiction. I'm enforcing it. You're destroying years of diplomacy with one emotional crusade." "Diplomacy built on theft and humiliation isn't peace, Colonel. It's rot with a smile." "Careful, Collins. You think you're a savior, but heroes don't last long in this business." She didn't respond. The line went dead. The quiet after his voice was almost deafening. Maya sat still for a long time, her reflection flickering in the black monitor screen. She wasn't angry, not yet. She was past that, somewhere colder, somewhere made of purpose. By 200, arrived again, this time with news that made the night even heavier. "Is talking," he said. "Command got to him. He's claiming you coerced him into a false confession." "Of course he is," she said quietly. "The desperate always rewrite their own history. He's saying you threatened him, that this is personal vendetta from a past reprimand. Command's sending auditors." She looked up sharply. "When?" "Tomorrow morning." That gave her less than 8 hours. She stood, grabbing her jacket. "Then we have 8 hours to make sure the truth can't be rewritten." "What are you planning?" asked. "Something I learned a long time ago," she said. When command plays politics, show them proof they can't erase. They worked in silence, moving through the dark corridors of the base. Every door opened, every file she felt like another step deeper into enemy territory, except the enemy wore the same uniform. In the comms vault, she recorded a statement. Her voice was calm, steady, each word deliberate. Commander Maya Collins, Authorization Gamma 7. Effective this date, I am preserving evidence of systemic corruption within Regional Command North, including personnel misconduct and embezzlement involving senior officers. This message will auto-distribute to Allied command servers at 600 hours, unless, with joint confirmation by both Oversight Command and the Defense Ethics Tribunal. This is not rebellion, this is accountability. She ended the recording. The transmission timer began counting down silently in the corner of the screen. 7:43:20, 7:43:19. Exhaled. You just declared war on your own chain of command. She looked at him, eyes clear. If your chain is rusted, you don't polish it, you replace it. At dawn, the auditors arrived, crisp uniforms, clipped voices, the same bureaucratic chill that followed every inspection. They didn't salute. They didn't ask. They simply walked in like ownership. The lead auditor, a man named, approached her in the atrium. Commander Collins, you are hereby relieved of your investigative duties pending review. Colonel Hayes will assume oversight. Maya's gaze was unflinching. Then review quickly. The clock's already running. He frowned. Excuse me. Check your secure channels, she said softly. You'll find an automated transmission scheduled for 6 hours from now. It contains every file, every recording, every name connected to this case, including yours. His composure slipped for the briefest second. You wouldn't dare. I already did. He studied her, the quiet, the stillness, the conviction that didn't need to shout, and he realized, perhaps too late, that she wasn't bluffing. After they left, found her again by the window. The storm had passed, leaving the sky raw and brilliant blue over the endless snow. 6 hours, he said quietly. 6 hours, she echoed. What happens after that? Maybe I lose everything, she said. Maybe I finally buy my peace. He hesitated. And if they come for you before then? She smiled faintly, tired but resolute. Then I hope they remember who trained me. For a moment, neither spoke. The base below buzzed with nervous activity, people cleaning, organizing, pretending everything was normal. But beneath it all was a sense of something shifting, a reckoning. Maya watched the horizon, the line where white met blue, fragile and endless. Funny thing about dignity, she murmured. It doesn't shout when it's right. It just waits for everyone else to realize it. How long could silence hold before someone tried to break it? It was 700 hours. The base had never been this quiet. Every corridor felt like a held breath. Soldiers moved quickly but spoke in whispers, their eyes darting between patrol screens and the command offices where the auditors had set up temporary quarters. Everyone knew something was happening, something that wasn't in the daily schedule. Up in her quarters, Commander Maya Collins stood at the window, watching the compound shift uneasily beneath the early light. Her communicator buzzed softly with coded messages from command, each one colder than the last. Cease and desist. Stand down. Await disciplinary action. She ignored them all. Her reflection in the glass looked calm, but her pulse was. Her stomach had that old field tightness again, the one that comes when you're walking through a battlefield without making a sound. Except this time, the battlefield wasn't dust and bullets. It was bureaucracy, deception, fear dressed in metals. Behind her, the door clicked, entered quietly, his expression heavy. They've locked access to the North servers, he said. Auditors are moving files, trying to cut your evidence trail. They can't stop the transmission, Maya replied. It's on an independent uplink, Satellite protocol. They're still trying. She turned to face him. Let them. Desperation always reveals guilt. He hesitated, studying her face. You sure you're ready for what comes after this? If the file goes through, Hayes won't just lose his post. He'll lose protection. And you'll lose your career. Her answer came without hesitation. I'd rather lose a title than my reflection. Outside, the wind picked up, scattering snow across the compound like ghost dust. Inside, the auditors grew restless. The lead had been making calls since dawn, coded phrases like containment, press inquiry suppression, and executive override. Maya had been in enough missions to recognize the language of panic when she heard it. At 9:30, she was summoned. The makeshift command office had been stripped of its flags and maps, replaced with polished desks and thin smiles. Colonel Hayes himself stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back. He'd arrived an hour earlier by helicopter, the storm's first gift. He turned slowly as she entered. The man had the kind of presence that came from rank, not respect, tall, silver hair, the calm arrogance of someone who'd always been obeyed. Commander Collins, he said with practiced civility, you've made quite a storm. I suppose the weather suits it, she said evenly. His smile didn't reach his eyes. You had a promising career once. Now you've crossed into insubordination. Unauthorized transmission, breach of security protocols, coercion of officers. Exposure of corruption, she interrupted softly. You left that one out. Be careful, he said, voice hardening. This isn't a moral crusade, it's an operation. And in operations, chain of command matters more than idealism. Chain of command doesn't excuse rot, Maya replied. And idealism built this uniform. You just forgot. For a brief moment his mask cracked. His jaw tightened, the calm fading from his tone. You think anyone will thank you for this? That command wants another scandal on its hands. I don't need their thanks, she said, just their truth. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. You've got 6 hours before that file hits the servers. 6 hours to undo it, or you'll be court-martialed, stripped of clearance, and erased from every database we have. She met his stare without flinching. Then erase me. Something in her tone made him pause, the quiet certainty of a soldier who'd already survived worse things than shame. You've forgotten your place, he said coldly. No, she replied. I remembered it the moment you tried to take it from me. He turned away, signaling to lock her down. They took her badge, her device, even her boots, standard containment procedure for internal descent. 2 guards escorted her to a holding suite near the operations wing. It wasn't a cell exactly, but it felt like one: steel walls, narrow bed, observation camera humming quietly in the corner. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the blank wall across from her. Outside, the hum of distant generators mixed with the wind's hollow whistle. The isolation should have been suffocating. Instead, it reminded her of sniper nests, long nights in enemy valleys, alone, cold, invisible. The waiting had always been the hardest part, but she'd learned something in those hours of silence. Patience isn't weakness, it's weaponized calm. Her reflection flickered faintly in the metal wall. She almost smiled. Still here, she thought, still steady. Minutes turned to an hour. Then 2. Then the door clicked again. It was Hayes. It was Rachel Mitchell, the young quartermaster. She looked pale, eyes darting toward the hallway. Ma'am, she whispered, they're scrubbing the servers, they've traced the uplink. Maya's pulse spiked. How? Colonel Hayes brought an override key. He's rerouting the signal. If they cut it in the next hour, the entire archive deletes permanently. How long do we have? Rachel's voice trembled. 40 minutes, maybe less. Maya stood. Where? They confined him to comm section. She exhaled slowly, her hands clenched. For the first time her calm cracked, not fear but urgency. Listen carefully, she said. The backup transmission is embedded in the primary relay station. It's physically wired into the array outside the main hangar. If Hayes wants to stop it, he'll have to destroy the array itself. Rachel frowned. That's dangerous. It's powered through the generator grid. Exactly, Maya said. He'll try to cut power first, but if we override manually, we can force the transmission, Rachel finished, eyes widening. But we need direct access. Maya smiled faintly. Then let's go get it. They moved through the back corridors like ghosts, avoiding cameras, staying in blind angles between sensor fields. Maya's muscle memory kicked in. Every hallway was a map, every vent a possible escape route. The base she'd come to audit had become a battlefield again, only this time she wasn't taking fire from enemies. She was dodging the system itself. At the comms vault, Rachel hacked the door panel with trembling hands. Sparks flared, the lock clicked, and they slipped inside. Rows of terminals glowed dimly, silent sentinels in the cold light. Maya approached the main console and entered a code sequence from memory. One only oversight command directors were trained to know. The screen came alive. Backup transmission active, 04126 remaining. But below it, another line blinked in red. Override request DETCTED, HAYES admin class A. He was already trying to kill it. Maya looked at Rachel. We hold this relay for 41 minutes, no matter what. Rachel nodded, fear replaced by something steadier. Yes, ma'am. 10 minutes later, the power surged. The lights flickered, alarms began to whine. The floor vibrated with the deep hum of the generator grid going offline. Hayes was moving faster than expected. Maya's voice stayed calm even as red warning lights painted the room. Switch to internal battery. Rachel scrambled to the side panel, flipping breakers. The backup hum returned, weaker but alive. Ma'am, power's unstable, she said. We'll burn out the array if this keeps up. Then we burn it, Maya replied. Better a scorched truth than a polished lie. Static burst through the comm speakers. Hayes's voice filled the room, cold and clear. Commander Collins, this is your last warning. Shut it down and stand down. Maya pressed the transmit key. Not this time, Colonel. You're destroying your career. I'm saving yours from infamy, she said, if you had any left to save. The line went dead again. Rachel looked at her. You really think he'll stop? Maya shook her head. Men like him don't stop until they've rewritten the ending. We'll just make sure the ending writes itself first. At 012 remaining, footsteps thundered down the corridor. Security forces, half a dozen armed officers. Rachel's eyes went wide. Ma'am, they're coming. Maya's hands moved faster. She opened the relay port, manually connecting the backup drive. Sparks danced across the console as she rerouted the signal directly through her own uplink code. The relay whined, a rising metallic wail. Then the main terminal flashed. Transmission locked, final upload sequence initiated. Maya stepped back, breathing hard. That's it. The door slammed open. Colonel Hayes stormed in with 2 guards. Enough. He raised his weapon toward the console. Step away. Maya didn't move. You pull that trigger, the surge will take the entire relay grid down. You'll fry every piece of data, and everyone will know exactly why. His hand shook, fury mixing with hesitation. You don't know what you're doing. Yes, she said quietly. I do. I'm making sure truth gets a signal. He took another step. You think they'll remember you as a hero. They'll call you insubordinate, a liability, a woman who couldn't follow orders. Her eyes never left his. Then let them call me that. History remembers the quiet ones better than the loud liars. The hum of the relay deepened, a sound like thunder in metal. Then the console beeped once, clear and final. Transmission complete. Hayes froze. Maya exhaled, shoulders dropping. The timer on the screen blinked 0. It's done. He lowered his weapon slowly. His voice, when it came, was almost a whisper. You just ended your career. She met his gaze. No, Colonel, I ended your protection. Security dragged her out minutes later, wrists bound, boots crunching through snow. Rachel was taken too, though Maya caught her eye and mouthed thank you as they passed. Hayes barked orders behind them, his voice shaking with anger. They put Maya in the same helicopter that had brought him. 2 guards, cold air seeping through the cabin door. As the rotors spun and the base grew smaller beneath them, Maya watched through the window rows of soldiers looking up, some saluting quietly, others simply staring. The truth was out now. The question was what it would cost. The clouds swallowed the horizon, the base vanished. For the first time in years, Maya felt something she hadn't since Kandahar, not peace exactly, but clean air, like the storm had finally moved through her chest. Hours later, as the helicopter cut across the snow plains, her communicator buzzed. A scrambled channel opened briefly, its voice low and cautious. Commander, file confirmed. Transmission hit central servers. Public Ethics Tribunal just announced emergency review. You did it. Maya closed her eyes. The hum of the blades softened into something almost like silence. They're calling you rogue, added. She smiled faintly. Good, that means I hit the target. He hesitated, then said quietly, some of the younger soldiers, they've started calling the relay station Collins Light. They say it's what kept them from giving up. She didn't answer right away. Her throat tightened, but her voice, when it came, was steady. Tell them light doesn't belong to anyone, she said. It just shows what's been hidden too long. The helicopter flew on, cutting through the vast white emptiness, a lone speck against the endless cold. And for the first time, the silence didn't feel like isolation. It felt like freedom. How do you defend yourself when the truth already feels like a crime? The transport helicopter touched down on the tarmac of Allied Command North. Gray sky, gray concrete, gray faces waiting at the landing pad. Everything about the scene reeked of order, cold, surgical, practiced. The kind of place where words like integrity and accountability were printed on walls, not lived in rooms. 2 military police officers escorted Maya down the ramp. Her wrists were still bound, but loosely. She didn't resist. She didn't need to. Her victory had already escaped their reach 6 hours ago. At the base of the stairs, a woman waited, sharp uniform, expression unreadable. Commander Collins, she said, voice clipped. I'm Colonel Krantz, Defense Ethics Tribunal liaison. You'll follow me. Maya nodded once. The walk through the compound felt endless, corridors of glass and steel, faces turning just long enough to pretend they hadn't. Whispers followed like ghosts. That's her. The whistle, the rogue. Krantz opened a door into a sterile conference room. A camera blinked red from the ceiling. Tribunal convenes in 10 minutes, she said. You'll have no counsel present. You can make a personal statement if you wish. Maya's tone was calm. And will anyone actually listen? Krantz hesitated. That depends on what you say. The door closed. Silence again. The kind that always comes before verdicts. At 900, the tribunal assembled. 3 officials sat behind a long table, their insignia polished to mirror brightness. A flag hung limply behind them. Colonel Hayes stood to one side, his face composed, his voice ready. Wasn't allowed in the room. Rachel had been reassigned for her own protection. Maya stood alone before them, unarmed and unflinching. The presiding officer, General Tanner, cleared his throat. Commander Collins, you are charged with breach of operational secrecy, unauthorized transmission of classified data, and conduct unbecoming an officer of the Allied Command. He paused, eyes narrowing slightly. Do you understand these charges? Yes, Maya said. I understand that truth now counts as a breach. Murmurs rippled through the room. Tanner's expression hardened. "You will address this body with respect, Commander." "I am," she said softly. "Respect begins with honesty." Colonel Hayes stepped forward. "Permission to provide context, sir." "Granted." Hayes projected his polished narrative onto the screen, clips of Maya entering the base, clips of the confrontation, carefully edited audio of her saying, "We burn it," and "I already did." Each word pulled from context painted her as reckless, dangerous. He concluded smoothly. This officer's actions risked destabilizing an entire region. Her emotional conduct undermined both morale and command structure. I recommend full dismissal without honors. When he finished, Tanner looked back at Maya. "Do you contest any of this?" She studied the projection for a long moment. Then she said quietly, "No, I confirm it." A ripple of confusion moved across the panel. "Yes," she continued, "I said those words. I broke their systems because they were already broken. The only difference is I refuse to pretend otherwise." Hayes scoffed. "You endangered lives." "I saved what was left of their dignity," she replied. "Tell me, Colonel, when did you decide profit mattered more than your oath?" "Objection." "Overruled," said Tanner, eyes sharpening. "Let her speak." Maya's gaze swept the room. "You built a fortress out of silence. I tore a hole in it so sunlight could get in. You call that rebellion, I call it restoration." No one moved. No one coughed. The air itself seemed to hold its breath. She stepped closer to the table. "If any of you still remember what that uniform meant before it turned corporate, before medals became marketing, then you know this isn't about protocol. It's about what happens when command forgets why it exists." Tanner's expression shifted. Just a flicker, a memory perhaps of younger years when rules had faces instead of forms. Maya lowered her voice. "You can strip my title, take my clearance, call me unstable, but you can't bury what's already uploaded. You can't unsee what you've seen." Hayes started to speak again, but Tanner lifted a hand. "That will be all, Colonel." For the first time, Hayes hesitated. "Sir." "Sit down." He did. The panel recessed for deliberation. Maya was led to a side room, bare metal, one chair, one cup of water. She sat, fingers tracing the rim of the cup. For the first time in days, fatigue pressed into her bones like gravity. Her hands shook slightly. She wasn't afraid of losing her career. She was afraid of losing the purpose that had kept her alive long enough to do this. The door creaked. Krantz entered, closing it behind her. "They're still deciding," she said quietly. "They may not go as far as court-martial. There's talk of forced retirement." Maya smiled faintly. "Early retirement for telling the truth. Generous." Krantz hesitated, then lowered her voice. "Between us, your file changed things. The Oversight Board has suspended half of Hayes's department. They'll announce a public audit within 48 hours. Maya looked up. "Then it was worth it." Krantz's eyes softened. "You'll lose your clearance." "Maybe that's the only way to see clearly." Krantz almost smiled. "You really don't stop, do you?" "No," Maya said, "because they don't either." An hour later, the verdict came. "Commander Maya Collins," Tanner read aloud, "this tribunal finds that while your methods were unauthorized, your actions exposed credible violations of ethics and command conduct. Effective immediately, you are honorably discharged from active duty and relieved of oversight command." He paused, then added more softly, "Your record will reflect commendable service." Hayes shot him a look of disbelief, but Tanner ignored it. The decision was done. Maya didn't react. She simply saluted, steady, precise, the kind that came from the soul, not the shoulder. "Permission to speak freely, sir." Tanner nodded. "Granted." She held his gaze. "When you write your reports tonight, ask yourself one thing. Are you protecting the system or the people who depend on it? One survives only if the other stays pure." Then she lowered her hand and walked out. No guards followed, no applause. Just the hollow echo of boots on tile and the faint click of a door closing behind the truth. Outside the compound, snow fell again. The same white silence she'd left behind at Prestige North. But this time it didn't feel cold. Waited near a parked truck. He wasn't supposed to be there. His transfer had been delayed for review. He grinned slightly when he saw her. "You did it," he said. "I lost." He shook his head. "No, ma'am, they just gave you a different weapon." She looked at him, meaning. "Freedom, you're not bound by their codes anymore. You can say what others can't." She thought about that. The idea of a soldier without orders had once terrified her. Now it felt like breathing without armor. "Rachel," she asked. "She's safe, transferred to humanitarian logistics in Oslo, said to tell you she, still testing courage." Maya smiled faintly. "Good." Handed her a small envelope. From the younger troops at Prestige North, they started something called the Collins Doctrine. She raised an eyebrow. "That sounds dangerous." "It's simple," he said. "They wrote it on the mess hall wall. When in doubt, do the right thing, even if nobody's watching." Her throat tightened. She looked away toward the horizon. "Maybe they'll forget my name," she murmured. Shook his head. "Maybe, but not the light you turned on." That night she checked into a roadside in miles from any base. The clerk didn't recognize her, didn't salute, didn't care. For the first time in years, anonymity felt like luxury. In her room she poured herself a glass of water, sat on the edge of the bed and watched the snow outside melt against the window pane. Her communicator buzzed once, an encrypted message from an unknown source. She opened it. File status, VERIFIED, audit expansion approved. Initiator, Central Ethics Council. Subject, Collins report. She stared at the screen, then turned it off. The glow lingered in her eyes even after the light faded. She whispered to the empty room, "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it just acts." At dawn she walked outside. The world was quiet again, clean, untouched. A lone bird crossed the gray sky, its wings slicing through the cold. She thought of Rachel, of the countless faces hidden behind uniforms, each one waiting for permission to remember what they once believed in. She didn't know where she would go next, maybe somewhere far from bases and briefings, maybe toward the next broken place that needed a mirror held to it. All she knew was this: the world didn't need another perfect officer. It needed imperfect ones who refused to stop caring. As she walked toward the horizon, her shadow stretched long over the snow. And though no one was watching, she stood a little taller. Why did peace feel like camouflage? It had been 3 months since the tribunal. 3 months since Commander Maya Collins walked away from the machine she once believed in. The medals were boxed. The uniform hung in a storage closet of a rented apartment above a mechanic's shop in rural Norway, smelling faintly of oil and silence. Every morning she rose before dawn out of habit. She brewed coffee in an old metal pot, laced her boots, and took long walks through the snow-lined hills that stretched behind the village. No comms, no orders, no one to salute her. She told herself this was healing. But soldiers never really heal. They just learn quieter ways to hurt. The world had moved on. News headlines burned bright for a weak oversight scandal. Commander exposes rot in command. Hero or traitor then vanished beneath newer stories. Hayes was gone, stripped of rank, facing inquiry. Prestige North was now under new leadership. And Maya was a name most people had already filed away with last winter's snow. Still, every time she passed and saw some headline about ethics reform, she wondered if the ripple was still moving outward, invisible but alive. One gray morning, as she returned from her walk, a black SUV waited by the mechanic's lot. tinted windows, government plates. She sighed, couldn't even give me a week of warning. The passenger door opened. Out stepped a man in civilian winter gear, late 40s, lean, composed, an air of intelligence more than rank. "Maya Collins," he said, "you're hard to find." "I like it that way," she replied. "If you're here to serve papers, I'll save you the gas money." He smiled slightly. "Not papers, an invitation." He handed her a folder, plain cover, no insignia. Inside was a photo. A convoy burned out in the desert, aid workers' insignia scorched black. Under it, a single-line project, civilian extraction failure. Casualties, 23. Her stomach tightened. "This is recent." 2 weeks, he said. "Northern Sudan, relief team targeted by insurgents. Locals blame each other. No official involvement, but unofficially," he paused. "We think someone inside sold the convoy's coordinates." She looked up. "Why tell me?" "Because you understand what happens when the wrong people hide behind the right flag," he said. "And because we're putting together a small task force, off-grid, cross-jurisdictional. We work with humanitarian agencies to protect operations in conflict zones. Oversight without politics." Maya's brow lifted. "Sounds like a contradiction." He smiled faintly. "That's why we need contradictions like you." She handed the folder back. "I'm done." He didn't flinch. "You said that once before, right before you changed a whole system. That system tried to erase me. And yet," he said quietly, "here we are standing on the result." For a long moment she said nothing. The snow started falling again, slow, delicate, too pure for the world they were talking about. Finally she asked, "What's the name of your outfit?" He hesitated, then said, "We call it Unit 9. Small, quiet, moral first, mission second. You'd like it." "Or hate it," she muttered. "Either way," he said, pulling on his gloves, "you'd make it better." He gave her a card, no name, just a number. "If you ever decide peace feels too empty." Then he was gone. That night sleep wouldn't come. She sat by the window, watching snow blur the lights of the small harbor below. The folder lay open on the table beside the untouched dinner. She traced the photo with her fingertips. The bodies, the black smoke, the half-visible relief logo on a burned-out truck door. Different country, same pattern. She remembered Rachel's voice months earlier. "Fear can turn into courage if you decide to stop serving the wrong masters." Maybe courage wasn't permanent. Maybe it needed to be fed like fire. She looked at the phone number again, then turned off the light. 2 weeks passed. She didn't call, but she began to prepare without admitting it to herself. She oiled her old sidearm, recalibrated her range scope, ran 10 kilometers every morning instead of 5. The quiet life had sharpened her again without her consent. Then, one afternoon, the mechanic's radio crackled with foreign news. An ambush on a humanitarian convoy near the Eritrean border. Survivors reported seeing men in foreign uniforms escorting the attackers. Her chest tightened. That night she called the number. It rang once. Then a calm voice answered, "Unit 9. "This is Collins," she said. "You still need contradictions." 2 days later, she was in London. Unit 9's headquarters wasn't a base. It was a repurposed warehouse tucked behind a shipping port, indistinguishable from the noise of trade and sea salt. Inside, screens glowed in rows, maps filled the walls, and people moved with the quiet focus of purpose, not rank. The man from Norway greeted her with a nod. "Glad you came, call me." He gestured toward a table where 3 others waited. Duz, Cyberintel Analyst, ex-Interpol. Merck, Logistics and Recon, former UN Peacekeeper. Doctor, Trauma Specialist, civilian, the heart of the team. Introduced them simply. "We don't salute here, we act." They briefed her on the mission. 23 dead aid workers. smuggled weapons traded through black-budget military contracts, an unidentified broker specter coordinating both sides of a humanitarian war. Maya listened in silence, reading maps, nodding patterns. Her old instincts re-engaged, the mental triangulation, the quiet hum of analysis. But this time, something inside her resisted the rhythm. Finally she asked, "Why me?" Answered simply, "Because you still care about the line between right and convenient, and because everyone else we asked was afraid." They deployed 3 days later under civilian cover, aid inspectors headed for the region. Maya wore local relief colors again, not camouflage, not armor. The irony stung. As the transport touched down on a dusty airstrip, the heat hit like a wave. The smell of fuel, sweat, and distant smoke filled the air. Different continent, same ghosts. In the truck, handed her a tablet. Convoy route runs south to the border town of. That's where the last team went missing. "Inspector," Maya asked. "Whoever he is," said. "He knows our every move. The comms leaks come from inside one of the partner NGOs." "So we're walking into a double mirror," Maya murmured. Nodded, "Welcome back to the game." She looked out the window as they drove. Children waved from the roadside, thin arms, wide smiles, dust swirling around bare feet. She waved back automatically. Somewhere between the noise and the light, she felt the old ache again, the need to protect something fragile, even when it wasn't hers. That night they camped outside. The horizon burned faintly orange from distant fires. Maya stood watch alone, rifle resting beside her knee. The desert wind hummed through the tents. Approached quietly, carrying 2 mugs of tea. "Couldn't sleep," she said. "Thought you might not either." Maya smiled, still learning how to live without walls. Studied her. "You don't have to carry everyone's ghosts." Maya's gaze stayed on the horizon. "They're lighter when you share them." Nodded. "Says tomorrow we meet the local contact, the one who might know who Spectre really is." "Then tomorrow decides everything," Maya said. Hesitated. "Do you ever regret it, exposing command?" "Every day," Maya said. Then after a pause, "And not once." They drank in silence as the wind shifted. In the distance, a storm flickered, a faint line of lightning crawling over the desert edge. At dawn they moved toward. The village looked half alive, half abandoned, market stalls shuttered, walls pockmarked from gunfire. Their contact waited near a well, an old man with sun-creased skin and clear eyes. "You are the woman who burned the generals," he said softly. Maya blinked. "That's one way to put it." He smiled faintly. "Word travels, truth always finds new carriers." He handed her a drive. "This has proof of who sells the coordinates. You will not like the answer." She frowned. "Who?" He didn't answer. He just said, "Be careful which ghosts you resurrect." Back at camp, decrypted the data. The screen filled with transaction logs, encrypted codes that matched old Allied command identifiers. His face darkened. "These aren't random leaks. Someone in our own coalition's relief division is feeding routes directly to mercenary groups." Maya felt her pulse slow. "Same pattern as Prestige North." "Exactly," said. "Different continent, same disease." He looked at her. "We need proof strong enough to survive daylight. Think you can handle that?" She almost laughed. "That's what they told me last time." That night, as she sat alone writing mission notes by lantern light, she caught her reflection in the metal case beside her. The same eyes, the same quiet, but a new question behind them. Was she rebuilding what she destroyed, or repeating it? The desert wind slipped under the tent flap, carrying the smell of dust and distant rain. Maya whispered into the night, half prayer, half promise. "Maybe the world doesn't need heroes. Maybe it just needs people who remember what truth costs." The storm rolled closer, thunder muttering like distant artillery. Tomorrow would bring contact. And perhaps betrayal. But for now, the air felt clean again, raw, alive, unforgiving. Peace, she realized, wasn't absence of war. It was choosing to fight for something you could still believe in. Why did betrayal always sound like static before it spoke? The sandstorm came without warning, an amber wall rolling across the desert, swallowing horizon and sky. The convoy braked hard, dust roaring through open windows. Maya's radio crackled, visibility 0 set perimeter. She pulled her scarf over her mouth and stepped out into the wind. Grit hit her face like needles. The others followed, shouting orders, hauling tarps over supply crates, clutching her tablet under her coat. The storm screamed so loud it drowned thought itself. And through that chaos came a single flash of memory. Another storm years ago, a different battlefield, the same helpless noise of people trying to hold order against nature. Only this time she refused to lose anyone. "Anchor the comms mast," she yelled. "If we lose signal, we lose the mission." Fought his way through the gale. Masts already down, sand choked the relay. Maya swore under her breath. They'd lose satellite feed within minutes. The evidence they'd gathered on Spectre, the data proving an insider leak, was on its encrypted server. If the storm cut them off before transmission, they'd have to start over. A shadow moved through the dust, too tall, too deliberate. Maya lifted her sidearm. "Identify." No answer. Then a glint, metal shoulder patch, familiar logo. Allied Command Humanitarian Corps. Her blood went cold, down. A burst of gunfire ripped through the storm. Bullets hissed into sand around them, muffled but lethal, screamed. Dropped behind a crate, returning controlled bursts. The attackers moved like professionals, disciplined, coordinated, not raiders, trained. "They knew where we'd be," growled. "We're burned." "Fall back to the vehicles," Maya shouted. They crawled through the storm toward the trucks. Sand bit her skin raw. Visibility 10 feet. A figure loomed in front of her, tall, heavy, rifle aimed low. She fired once. The man dropped without a sound. The storm howled louder, like it wanted to erase every witness. When it finally broke, the desert lay in eerie calm. 2 trucks burning. 3 men down, none of hers. 1 missing. Maya knelt beside the body she'd shot. The insignia on his arm confirmed it. Allied Relief Security Division. Friendly uniform. Enemy purpose. Limped over, clutching his shoulder. "They took her. The tablet's gone." "She's alive." "Maybe, but the data Spectre's files, they have it now." Maya looked west, where the tracks led toward the border hills. The sun broke through the thinning dust, turning the air to fire. "Then that's where we go." Stared at her. "You're injured, we need extraction." "Extraction means erasure," she said. "We go dark and this dies like every truth before it." He hesitated. "You can't save everyone." "Then I'll save what I can reach." By nightfall, they reached the hills, crags of black rock rising from the sand like fossilized bones. Maya led, moving with a sniper's patience. Every instinct screamed trap. But instinct was all she had left. They found a camp hidden between cliffs, 3 tents, a generator and a satellite dish camouflaged under netting. Inside, sat tied to a chair, bruised but conscious. A man stood beside her, back turned, speaking into a comms mic. Maya raised her rifle, sighted center mass. Then the man turned. She froze. It wasn't a stranger. It was Colonel Hayes. Alive, unpunished. Different uniform, same eyes, calm, sharp, confident. He smiled faintly when he saw her. "You really should stop following ghosts, Commander." Her grip tightened. "They said you were stripped of rank." "Titles are paper, influence is air. You can't strip air." He gestured toward the satellite. "I became what command needed, someone who could manage unofficial solutions. Humanitarian by day, logistics by night. Spectre, if you like code names." Muttered a curse. You were the broker. Hayes nodded. War's expensive, peace even more. Someone has to make both pay for themselves. Maya took a slow step forward. You sold coordinates. You killed aid workers. I maintained balance, he said calmly. A few tragedies keep the funding flowing. You know this game better than anyone, you just forgot the rules. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You always did confuse control for purpose. He looked almost amused. And you always mistook defiance for morality. Tell me, what has it brought you? Exile, isolation, a handful of idealists. She didn't answer. Her silence said enough. Hayes turned back to the satellite. The data you stole proves nothing without context. I'll erase it, and by morning the world will believe what I tell them. He reached for the console. Maya fired. The bullet shattered the control board. Sparks leapt, lights died, the generator screamed into silence. Hayes spun, drawing his pistol. Still dramatic, he said. Fired first, missed. Hayes's shot answered, striking in the leg. Screamed, Maya dove behind a crate, rolled, came up firing. Hayes retreated into the shadows of the tent, moving with trained precision. You're making the same mistake, Collins, he called. You think exposure fixes rot. It only spreads it wider. She moved silently around the tent's edge, eyes narrowed. Rot can't hide in sunlight. A click. Behind her. She turned just in time to see another figure, Hayes's second. Too late. A flash. Pain tore through her shoulder. She fell to one knee, gasping. But the shot drew her attacker out of cover, and bleeding, still managed one clean burst that dropped him. Maya pressed her hand against the wound, blood warmed through her sleeve. The tent flickered with dying light. Hayes stepped out, gun raised. You could have joined me, he said. Led with me. Instead, you chose martyrdom. She met his gaze through the haze. No, I chose to stop pretending. Her last bullet took him clean through the chest. He staggered, surprise more than pain crossing his face. You'll never. Then he fell. Silence again. Only the desert wind, soft now, brushing through canvas and dust. Sobbed quietly as Maya cut her free, leaned against the generator, pale but alive. You always find the worst places to win, he muttered. Maya managed a tired smile. Victories overrated. They gathered what data they could, half-burned drives, the surviving tablet, enough to prove Spectre's identity beyond denial, enough to end it. When dawn came, they buried the bodies in the sand. No speeches, just respect. As the first light rose over the dunes, looked at Maya. What happens now? Maya watched the sun climb. We take it home. Frowned, and then what? Then maybe the next convoy makes it. 3 days later, at a refugee transit camp near Port Sudan, they transmitted everything, photos, coordinates, confession recordings, directly to the Allied Ethics Tribunal. Within hours, the network broadcast leaked across global channels. Spectre exposed, former colonel behind aid killings. For the first time, command didn't deny, they confirmed. And for once, the truth survived daylight. That night, Maya sat alone on a rooftop overlooking the harbor. The air smelled of salt and diesel, of smoke and rebirth. She held her slinged arm still, as she wrote a report that wasn't for any command, just for herself. Lesson 1, corruption never dies, it evolves. Lesson 2, loyalty without conscience is surrender. Lesson 3, peace isn't given. It's defended in the quiet choices no one applauds. Joined her carrying 2 mugs of tea. Stable, she said. Medical transport leaves in the morning. They're calling us heroes. Maya smiled faintly. They'll forget by next week. Maybe, but for this week, 23 families will know who betrayed them. Maya looked at the horizon. Then it's enough. Hesitated. You could come back. Central wants you to advise their new ethics division. Maya shook her head. I'm not built for boardrooms. So what will you do? She thought for a long moment. There are other convoys, other ghosts. Someone has to keep the light moving. The sea glimmered under the rising moon. Somewhere below, a child laughed, a sound so pure it felt foreign in a place built from grief. Maya listened to it until the ache in her chest softened. She whispered almost to herself, "We can't save everyone, but we can stop pretending they don't matter." The wind carried her words out across the dark water. Why did silence feel heavier after victory? The cargo plane droned north through a violet dawn, its hull trembling over clouds. Maya sat by a window that wasn't really a window, just scratched holding back 30,000 feet of thin air. Below, the desert blurred into sea, then sea into snow. The world kept turning, uncaring, and for the first time she was grateful for that. Slept across the aisle, head on her folded jacket. Dozed beside her, leg bandaged, snoring like thunder through gauze. Every few minutes his breath hitched, half laugh, half groan, and Maya smiled faintly. He'd survive. Stubbornness was the first rule of resurrection. She reached into her coat and pulled out a small envelope. Inside lay a single photograph. The convoy team they'd saved, lined up beside a rebuilt relief truck painted with new words in stenciled black. For those who chose to see. She turned it over. On the back had written 3 words, "Light travels quietly." 2 weeks later, Norway again. The snow hadn't changed, but she had. The same streets, same mechanic shop, same upstairs apartment. Except now the quiet didn't accuse her. It welcomed her home like an old comrade. She stacked her few belongings. The duffel, the field journal, the plain black coat that had once passed for civilian camouflage. The sling was gone. The scar remained, pink and unashamed. Every scar, she decided, was just the body remembering where conviction had cut through. Outside, children threw snowballs in the street. Their laughter felt like something sacred, proof that the world still deserved defending, even if it never noticed who kept it safe. She walked to the harbor and stood at the edge, boots sinking into fresh frost. The sea breath slow and endless. For the first time in years, she wasn't waiting for orders. A week later, a letter arrived. No return address, no signature. Just a wax seal, Unit 9. Inside, a single line written in sharp handwriting. "We're still out here. When you're ready, you know how to find us." She folded it carefully and placed it in her journal. Not as a summons, but a reminder. Peace was never permanent. It was only rented between storms. That night she dreamed of her first command. Sand, static, the young corporal's voice breaking through radio interference. "Ma'am, there's nothing left to hold." And in the dream, for once, she answered. "Then hold yourself, that's where it starts." When she woke, she was crying, but the kind of tears that washed, not drowned. Months passed. She taught survival courses to relief volunteers. She rebuilt trust in small ways, showing them how to read terrain, how to keep calm when noise turned to panic, how to hold the line without weapons. They called her instructor. She never corrected them. Sometimes journalists came asking for interviews. She always declined. "Let the reports speak," she'd say. "Voices fade, proof doesn't." And yet every now and then she'd receive letters, handwritten shaky English from aid workers in far-off places. "We used your methods. We made it through. Thank you." She kept every one of them in a wooden box under her bed. Not trophies, just proof that quiet courage still traveled. One evening, while closing up the training hall, she found Rachel Mitchell waiting outside. For a second, Maya thought it was a ghost. Then the young woman smiled, older now, uniform exchanged for civilian jacket, eyes bright with the kind of peace you only earn after chaos. "Ma'am," Rachel said softly, "I heard you were here." Maya blinked. "You kept your promise." Rachel nodded. "You told me fear could become courage. I wanted to tell you it did." They walked together along the frozen quay, steam rising from their coffee cups. Rachel spoke about the new generation of officers, the reforms, the way people now quoted the Collins doctrine like a quiet oath. Maya listened, half embarrassed, half moved. When Rachel finished, she asked, "Do you miss it, the field?" Maya thought for a moment. "Sometimes, but I think the mission outgrew me. That's how you know it worked." They stood in silence, watching the harbor lights shimmer. Finally, Rachel said, "You changed more than a base, ma'am. You changed how we see command." Maya smiled faintly. Then maybe command finally learned to see. After Rachel left, Maya lingered by the water until night fell. The aurora rippled faintly above the horizon, a slow green breath across the dark. She remembered what Hayes had said before dying: "You can't strip air." He'd been wrong, you couldn't strip it, but you could cleanse it. She whispered to the wind, "That's what we did." Spring thaw came early that year. The snow melted from the rooftops, leaving the village smelling of salt and pine. Maya spent her mornings repairing the training yard fence, her evenings writing letters she never mailed, letters to the men she'd lost, to the younger version of herself who once believed rules could save souls. In one she wrote, "You can't teach dignity. You can only show what happens when it disappears. And pray someone learns before the silence returns." She tucked it between the pages of her journal, beside the photo of the convoy. One afternoon, while she was sanding a cracked rifle stock, a group of local teenagers passed the yard, laughing. One stopped, staring curiously at her workshop. "You're the soldier from the stories," he said shyly, "the one who fought without fighting." Maya looked up, "Something like that. Is it true you fired everyone at a base once?" She laughed, the sound surprising even herself. "Not everyone, just the ones who forgot who they were." He nodded thoughtfully, as if storing that away for later years. "My father says you did the right thing." Maya's smile softened. "Then your father understands more than most generals." He left, running to catch his friends, leaving footprints across the damp road. She watched until they vanished around the corner. For the first time, the story felt less like a weight and more like a bridge, something others could cross without knowing who built it. That night she walked to the hillside above the harbor. The wind smelled of thawed earth and engine grease. In the distance, ships moved like slow constellations of light. She sat on a boulder, hands in her coat pockets, and looked out across the sea. The world was still imperfect, still corrupt, still heartbreakingly worth saving. But now, when she thought of all the ones who'd fallen, Hayes, the aid workers, the nameless, she didn't feel bitterness, only understanding. Because the truth she'd chased her whole life wasn't about exposing monsters. It was about reminding humans to stay human. As the first stars appeared, she took out her journal and wrote her final entry. "We are all temporary ranks, temporary names, temporary power. But the way we stand when no one's watching, that's permanent." Sometimes dignity doesn't shout, it doesn't even speak. It simply acts quietly, until the world notices it needed saving. She closed the book and placed it beside her. The wind turned the last page by itself, as if reading over her shoulder. Maya smiled. Then she stood, the sea glittering below, and walked down the hill into the lights of the village. Another simple woman blending into ordinary life, leaving extraordinary echoes behind. The night swallowed her shape, but not her legacy. Because somewhere out there, in deserts and snowfields and quiet offices, people were still whispering her name, not out of worship, but remembrance. And remembrance, she knew, was the truest form of respect. Fade out. Voiceover, low, steady final line. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.